tragedy leads to trauma, which can ruin a person's life and completely end a player's career. Let's talk about Isiah Pacheco. Isiah Pacheco was born on March 2nd, 1999 in Vineland, New Jersey. Now as a kid, he was really fast and his parents signed him up for football when he was only 8 years old. Isiah had a couple of siblings, but his older brother Trayvon was by far his biggest supporter. He would pull up to all his football games, he was always there in the crowd cheering him on and supporting him and giving him advice. So he was essentially his #1 fan, and soon we're gonna find out why that detail is important to this story. So like I said, Isiah started playing football when he was just 8 years old, and then when he got to high school, not only was he playing running back as you guys would expect, but he'd also played quarterback. Now whether or not he was a good quarterback, that's a separate point. Let's look at his stats. So during his time in high school, he would split his time between quarterback and running back pretty much half and half. In his freshman year on the ground, he had a total of 800 rushing yards with 12 rushing touchdowns. And as a quarterback, he had under 450 passing yards with 7 passing touchdowns, while throwing at a 27.4 completion rate. So to answer the question, no, he wasn't a really good quarterback at all. Now in his sophomore year from 2015 to 2016, his numbers did drop significantly. He had under 300 rushing yards with 4 rushing touchdowns all season, and only had 170 passing yards with 1 passing touchdown. So you guys remember earlier in the video when I said that his brother Trayvon was one of his biggest supporters, his biggest fan, and Isiah would always go out to him when he had questions or when he needed advice or whatever the case was. Well, that role model that Isiah had unfortunately passed away in January of that year when he was stabbed to death. So Isiah was only 16 at the time, so he was obviously still very young, so obviously like it hit him very hard. And like I said, they were very close, so this did affect him a lot. I can't imagine what it's like to lose a sibling, but you can honestly just picture how traumatizing it must be, especially when you're so young. And what's worse is that it wouldn't end here. In September 2017, one of Isiah's family members came to knock at their door and gave them the news that Isiah's older sister Celeste had also been murdered. Unfortunately, Celeste had been a victim of domestic violence and had left behind 3 young children. Now, as you can imagine, this was a big shock for the family, and even more so for young Isiah, because he had lost 2 of his siblings a year apart from each other. Now, this is enough to break down a grown man. So how did this 17-year-old kid handle it? Did he take some time off? Did he go to therapy? Did he start doing drugs? Did he become a criminal? How did he handle it? Well, the answer is he just kept playing football. So football went from being something that he loved to something that helped him channel his anger and release his frustrations and cope with the losses that he experienced throughout the entirety of the year. His reasoning is that his older siblings would have wanted him to keep going, and he wanted to make them proud, so he decided to leave it all out on the field. Now Isiah has been characterized with a very aggressive running style, which looks really funny, but that's literally just him leaving everything on the field. Now his coaches obviously told him that he can take some time off, that he can like be with his family, that he can relax, just try to get his mind off of it, just get his mind off of football and just try to focus on his healing. But Isiah didn't want to do that, so he decided to play that week. And I don't know if that was the extra motivation that he needed, but it definitely showed that there was something that he was trying to prove. He ended the game with 134 rushing yards with 1 rushing touchdown. Now the following week, him and his family hosted his sister's funeral, and that very same night he had a game scheduled, and he decided that he was going to attend it, and attended he did. He ended with another 3-digit game and another rushing touchdown. Now the toughness and dedication that Isiah has shown so far in his career has been unbelievable. Having gone through the traumatic experiences that he has so early in his life and not ending up depressed or going down a dark path, but on top of that, rising above it and keeping on with your football dreams is insane. So hey, shout out to him for that, man. Now, although he ended his high school career with under 1,500 passing yards total, 17 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions on a 37% completion rate, his almost 3,200 rushing yards and 44 rushing touchdowns were enough to rank him 30th best in the country, and were enough to get him offers from schools like Iowa, Pittsburgh, and Syracuse. Now, despite these offers, Isiah decided to stay close to home and sign with Rutgers. The reason for that being that he wanted to stay home close to his family after everything that had happened, and hey, we can't blame him for that. Now, throughout his college career, he didn't really put up any insane numbers per se. In his freshman year, his most notable performance was against number 4 ranked Michigan, where he ended the game with 142 rushing yards, with an 80-yard rushing touchdown, and 213 all-purpose yards. In his sophomore year, his rushing numbers did go up a little bit. In the season opener, he had 156 rushing yards with 4 rushing touchdowns, and he was one of 18 players nationally to do so. In that season, he also had 2 more 100-yard games, one against Liberty and another one against number 12 ranked Penn State. Isiah ended that season with 729 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. Now, all the other players I've done so far in my videos are all like newer players in the league, and what sucks for all of these new guys is that they all had a season that was affected by lockdown. Now, in most cases, it affected a lot of people's numbers, and in some cases, it even makes us wonder what would have happened if lockdown was never a thing. I guess we'll never know. Now, during lockdown year, Isiah only had 515 rushing yards with 3 rushing touchdowns, but his receiving numbers did go up a little bit. He totaled 130 receiving yards with 1 receiving touchdown. His most notable performance that year was 133 yards yards against Illinois. So one thing that confuses me about Americans and how you guys do it in the States, me, I'm Canadian, right? So it's like us, like our school system is like very different from yours. So from my understanding, you guys, when you go to school in uni, like college or whatever, you have your freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. So when I was doing my research for Isiah, I was kind of confused. He had his freshman year, his sophomore year, his junior year, and then junior year 2. Is that not supposed to be like senior year? How does it work? Why does he have 2 junior years? Is that a thing? Anyways, it didn't really make much sense to me. I didn't even take the time to look it up. So if you guys know the answer, just leave it in the comments. If you guys are American, just explain it to me. Anyway, so fast forward to his senior year or junior year 2, whatever you guys want to call it. He finished the season with 647 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. His most notable performance was 107 rushing yards against number 19 ranked Michigan. He finished his college career with 563 carries, 2,442 rushing yards, and 3,039 all-purpose yards, which earned him a spot in the top 10 running backs in program history. Now after this, Isiah decided to declare for the NFL draft, and in the combine, he did pretty well. He had the fastest time amongst all running backs in the 40-yard dash with 4.37 seconds. My bad. Now this wasn't enough to change people's opinions that they had already made by watching him play in high school and watching him play in college. So he ended up getting drafted in the 7th round, 251st overall by the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, any player that gets selected that low in the draft doesn't have any high expectations coming into any season and aren't expected to have a big impact on their team or to make anything of their career, really. But obviously, that's not the case for everyone. If you guys haven't watched one of the previous videos I made about Puka Nacua, who I explained was also selected in the 5th round, I believe, he turned out to have an amazing career so far in the NFL. So if you guys haven't watched it, go check it out. I'll leave it up top so you guys can go watch it. So far, things weren't looking too good for Isiah. He was 3rd string running back behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon. Despite this though, he had a pretty good NFL debut. In his NFL debut, he had 62 rushing yards with 1 rushing touchdown, which was pretty impressive because people don't typically expect you to score a rushing touchdown in your first NFL game, especially if you're not a starter. So although he didn't put up any crazy numbers so far, his performances during the games and his performance at practice were enough for Andy Reid to trust him enough to get him into the starting role for week 7. However, as we know, the Chiefs aren't a pass first team, so he didn't really get too many opportunities rushing the ball until week 10. In their win against the Chargers in week 11, Isiah Pacheco had his first 100-yard game, and the Chiefs ended the season 15-3, finishing 1st in their division. Now in the divisional round against the Jaguars, Isiah Pacheco had a really good game, and his performance helped propel the team to a win, moving them to the conference championship and one step closer to the Super Bowl. He had 95 yards, including a 39-yard rush. In the conference championship against the Bengals against Joe Burrow, he didn't put up any crazy numbers on the ground. He had a pretty significant 59 receiving yards, which helped them win the game by 3 points. So fast forward to Super Bowl 57 against the Eagles, which happened to be a really great game. Both teams played amazingly well. Isiah Pacheco had a great game. He had 76 yards and a touchdown in the Super Bowl as a rookie. The Chiefs ended up winning the Super Bowl that year, and that meant so much for Isiah. Obviously, being a football player, everyone wants to win that championship. But on top of that, because of everything that he went through as a kid, it meant even more to him because he felt like both his sister and his brother were watching him and were proud for everything that he was able to achieve. Having gone through tragedy and trauma when he was a kid to becoming a Super Bowl champion in the space of a couple of years is something truly remarkable. The fact that he didn't let anything get in his way and he didn't let anything cloud his judgment or dampen his spirits or just ruin his motivation or his love for the game. He didn't let any of that get in the way, and look at him now, Super Bowl champion. Amazing story. Now fast forward to the 2023 season, Isiah Pacheco's numbers did go up a little bit. In their week 4 win against the Jets, Isiah Pacheco had 115 rushing yards with a 48-yard run and 1 rushing touchdown, and he also had 3 receptions for 43 yards. Now he continued on a pretty good pace up until the week 13 game against the Packers, where he ran for 110 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. But unfortunately, he did injure his shoulder, which forced him to miss 2 weeks. Now he came back in week 16 for their game against the Raiders, and unfortunately he didn't really do much that game, and on top of that he suffered like a minor concussion, which didn't force him to miss any games, but it's definitely not something you want to see. Now this didn't affect his performance the following week because he had the best game of the season and probably the best game of his career up to this point. He finished the game with 130 rushing yards, 7 receptions for 35 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. The Chiefs finished 11-6 that year, and Isiah Pacheco had a total of 935 rushing yards with 7 rushing touchdowns and 244 receiving yards with 2 receiving touchdowns. Now Isiah's performances helped the team secure a spot in the wildcard, and their wildcard match against the Dolphins was a complete mismatch. They ended up winning the game 26-7, and Isiah Pacheco had a total 89 rushing yards. Now following week, the divisional round against the Buffalo Bills, rivalry game facing Josh Allen, Isiah definitely rose to the occasion. He had 97 rushing yards, including a 29-yard run that helped the team secure a win. So Dolphins check, Bills check, Next up was the Ravens. In a game against the Ravens, Isiah Pacheco had a career-high 24 rushing attempts for 68 yards and a rushing touchdown, and helped the team propel themselves to the Super Bowl on back-to-back years. Now, the Super Bowl last year against the 49ers was an interesting one. Now, the game itself was nice. It was a really good game. It's just everything around it. Anyone that watches football for the love of the game, that has been watching football for a long time, is kind of annoyed with the outside situations going on in the league, and you guys definitely know what I'm talking about. Now, to the displeasure of a lot of people, the Chiefs ended up winning the Super Bowl again in overtime, 25-22, making them back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Isiah Pacheco himself had a pretty good game, 59 yards with 6 receptions for 33 receiving yards, and he had a couple big plays late in the game that helped him secure an edge. Now, coming into the 2024 NFL season, things didn't start off too hot for him. In their week 2 win against the Bengals, Isiah had a really good game, 90 rushing yards and 21 receiving yards, but unfortunately he ended up breaking his fibula, which forced him to miss a bunch of games. He came back in week 13, but even after he came back healed, he didn't really look the same this year. Like, he didn't really put up the same numbers, and obviously, like I mentioned earlier in the video, the Chiefs aren't really like a rush first team. So that being said, him having suffered an injury and the Chiefs not really wanting to run the ball as much, he ended the season with only 310 rushing yards. Now, things have been arguably worse in the postseason so far. He's had less than 20 rushing yards in both games and has only had 5 attempts in both. Now, despite this, the Chiefs have won both of their playoff games so far, including the one against the Buffalo Bills, and Josh Allen just can't get a break. Like, honestly, they just free this guy. I feel so bad for Josh Allen, man. It's like every year this guy gives us hope. Every year we're like, oh, it's gonna be different now. Josh Allen's gonna put an end to this. Josh Allen, we're counting on you. I was counting on Josh Allen. Like, if you watch my last videos, I mentioned it. I had hope. I thought this year was going to be different, but I guess it ain't. But it's okay, Josh Allen. We forgive you. Next year's a different year, right? So anyways, the Chiefs are playing in the Super Bowl this weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles, so it's going to be a rematch. And me personally, fingers crossed, and I think I think everyone else will agree with me, fingers crossed, the outcome is going to be different this time around. Jalen Hurts, we're counting on you. Saquon Barkley, please. Saquon Barkley is one of my favorite players, and to be honest, I think he's arguably the best player in the league at the moment. Don't come for me. And yes, I do think he's better than Derrick Henry. And last time I said that, people got mad.
How dare you?
But I'm gonna die on that hill. If he's able to have a sick game and beat the Chiefs and win the Super Bowl, I think my debate is gonna be put to rest, and I think that's gonna be it. All that being said, I think Isiah Pacheco is definitely gonna be counted on in the Super Bowl more than he has so far. I feel like it's one of those games where either your superstars obviously shine and take over because they're so good, or like there's always that one underdog that no one expects to do anything crazy and just takes over the entire game. And I think that's kind of been a theme for Isiah in his career so far. Isiah Pacheco has been an underdog most of his career, and still he was able to have a huge impact on his team, helping them get back-to-back Super Bowls. Obviously, he's not had the best season so far, but to be fair, he has been injured and they haven't given him an opportunity to do much with the ball. But I think this time around it's going to be different. I think Isiah is going to have a really good game. I think he's definitely going to have more than 5 rushing attempts, and that's already a good start. So let's see what he can cook up for us. Let me know what your predictions are for the Super Bowl. Let me know who you think is going to win. Let me know who you think is going to have a great game. And do you think Saquon Barkley can lead his team to a Super Bowl? Let me know what you think in the comments. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. Like I said at the beginning, tragedy leads to trauma, and trauma a lot of times can destroy someone's life. It can destroy a lot of players' careers. We've seen a lot of players deal with so many off-field issues that like just completely ruin their career and then they just disappear. But that hasn't been the case for Isiah Pacheco. If anything, it just helped him get to the NFL, because he says that everything he does is in memory of his siblings. He always wants to make his siblings proud. So that's why he runs so hard and he leaves everything he has on the field, because he knows that life is short and life isn't guaranteed. So that's why he runs so aggressively. That's why he runs so passionately. Whether he has the ball in his hands or not, like his energy is always there. He's always running to the ball, always running to the huddle, always running to the line of scrimmage. Like he's just always like on top of his game. His dedication to the game is there, and his dedication to making his siblings proud is there, and I think that's something that's really amazing. Anyways, best of luck to Isiah in the Super Bowl. Best of luck with the rest of your career. And guys, remember, if you guys are going through adversity, if you guys are going through struggles, going through tragic events, just don't forget that you're not alone. There are people that are there to support you. There are people that are there to help you. The worst thing you can do is just give up and bum out. Just always keep working, keep that in mind, and always just keep your head up. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one.